So it's recording now.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Cool. Does it feel like it's different because it's recording? Just kidding.
Got to be professional.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Hey, can you introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Tammy. I'm from Australia, little place called Lismore in northern New South Wales, about 2 hours south of Brisbane. That's me.
Cool. And I'm Allen. I'm also from Australia. I'm from a place called Bundaberg, which is like in Queensland, just like 4 hours up from Brisbane. So,
Yeah.
And what are you Australians doing here?
Oh, well,
No, you're fine.
we're a part of the NET team, and yeah, we're just here to do some ministry in the Hamilton Diocese, which is really cool. What else are we doing here?
basically just going to youth and just like telling them to love Jesus and to embrace the church and
Yeah.
encouraging them in that, which is pretty cool.
Are you guys first years in?
Yeah.
Both
How's
first
it
years.
been?
It's been really good. It's been challenging at times, sometimes like physically exhausting because we're on the national team, which means like we travel all around Australia, but really rewarding because you get to see young people meet Jesus and kind of hear maybe for the first time that they're loved, and that's just really amazing to witness that. So it's been really good.
Yeah, it's definitely been like a year of growth where we just like been pushed out of our comfort zones a lot and just like, yeah, it's just definitely making us be a lot better as people as well as like ministering to youth. We're able to minister to each other, which is really amazing. And like for myself personally, being in a van, being an introvert, having to like mingle with people all the time is pretty hard, but you know, I've grown in that area, so it's pretty good. You definitely grow from a lot of things in that.
It's true. And you
good.
grow in your faith as well. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like you kind of find out what it means to have a relationship with Jesus, and you really get an insight into what the truth is of the Catholic Church, and getting to love Jesus is really cool. So, yeah.
So part of being a NET is like running small groups and actually like imparting that, I don't know, love and knowledge of Christ. So how do you do that, especially as an introvert? It'd be really cool to actually hear about how you cope with that. But what are your tips on how to run a small group?
Small group. So for me, I just think like when we run like days, like retreat days, we personally think small groups is probably the most important part of the day because it's a very relational ministry, and we want to like, one of the main things we want to do as a small group is we want to grow with them. And so sometimes in a large group format, it's kind of hard. So we take it down into small groups and just able to get to know them and just I guess, just be their mate kind of.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, like small groups is really important. And if you don't know the people in your small group, it's kind of like, I don't know, hard for them to connect to the day as well if they're not known.
Yeah.
So, well, we mainly run retreats. And like when we have the small group, we kind of like use it as a way to like really relate to them and to connect with them. But if you're using it as well for like a youth group, it's really good to have like a small group in a youth group so that like every week they can go back to like a support, or like they can go back to people that they know and like can actually talk to people about the stuff that's going on in their life. I know I haven't really ever experienced small groups in a youth group before, but I know that it's really fruitful for some people, just to be able to have that like support group. Because sometimes like you have your friends, but like you don't always talk about things that you need to talk about, and small groups can really be that space. And I think like as a small group leader, being able to like be relatable and understand where the kids are at, like understand where the youth is at, and know like who are they and what do they like to do, like what kind of people are they. Like, that's really important to get to know, and especially like straight like from the start, like know their name, know who they are, like know what they like to do. Like that's probably like the number one tip.
Yeah. And for me as well, since I was also on like the receiving side of a small group, like a lot, because NET teams came on, I also saw how much it like impacted the people around me, and how like kids were able to just be open, like myself included. I was able to be a lot more open, and I guess that's how like one of the ways I deal with it as an introvert. I'm just like I experienced it firsthand, so I want them to experience that as well. So I'm going to push myself out of the comfort zone so they can like be heard and like just be listened to, which is really powerful, I guess.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen that happen? I mean, like, obviously you probably have like firsthand about maybe seeing a kid that like is a little bit like guarded or whatever, but within small groups that like changing a bit.
Yeah, like
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Like small groups is so important for a kid that like doesn't feel confident in like talking up or is really shy. Like as a small group leader, it's really important to make sure that like everyone is heard. So like you might have someone in your small group who's like really loud and like just, I don't know, always wants to share, but also like paying attention to the person that like isn't really talking that much is really important, because chances are if they're not talking like in the small group, they probably don't really talk like that often to people who are like outside of their like comfort zone. And it's just important for them to know like they can be confident and like to talk to people that they don't know. So yeah, I think that's really important.
How do you like, I guess, help that person to, how do you tackle like the different types of people in a small group, you know, to...
So for like quiet people, it's really just very much fighting for them and just very much just being like, hey, I really want to get to know you as well as the rest of the people, and just being like, so what I do personally, I go around the small group and like, introduce yourself, maybe an interest about yourself, what you like doing as a hobby. And then if you like kind of relate to that, then you can be like, oh, that's really cool. And you can like expand on that. Therefore, you're taking that interest in them, and they're like, wow, they really do have an interest in me, and they want to hear me for what I have to say.
Yeah.
And like sometimes you also get those people who are like loud, but like they get shut down by their peers, and you're just like, nah, let's build a positive culture, because what they have to say is important. Like they deserve to be heard as well. So it's not just the quiet people. Sometimes the loud people as well sometimes just get shut down, and you're just like, nah, we want to hear you. We also want to hear from the rest of the people as well.
Yeah.
So just having that gentle but like approach, I guess, and just being able to like, I don't know, just getting to know them personally and know their interests so you can relate to them. So it's coming back to like being relational with them and just growing with them and knowing their interests.
Cool.
So, yeah.
How do you, so I'm guessing the point of a small group is to, I guess, go a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
What is that like? So I guess you get to know the people around the group, and then you know like their interests, but how have you found it, you know, actually going a little bit deeper? Like, do you have any, I don't know, tips and tricks about
how to do that? Yeah, so like just be confident in asking, I guess, a scary question. Like say there's been like a talk or something before the small group, like just ask something that they might be a bit like, oh wow, like they're just asking that question about Jesus or something. And when you ask that question, don't be afraid to just like sit there for a bit and just like kind of let them think about that question. And they might feel really awkward, like if you're just sitting in silence. But it's really important just to wait for them, because eventually like one of them will be like, okay, I'll say my point of view. And eventually they'll start to talk, and then the conversation will hopefully flow. And if it doesn't flow, like if you ask a question and like no one wants to answer, like you can always be like, hey guys, that's like all good. And try and think of like something else to ask them that's kind of like along the same lines, but not as like intense, I guess. Like I'm trying to think of like a good example. Like if you want to like ask them about Jesus, you could say like, hey, like I don't know where any of you guys are at, but maybe we could go around the circle and just say like, what are your thoughts about Jesus? Or how do you feel about being here today? Just like to kind of start off. But then like if you wanted to go deeper, like don't be afraid to do that, because that's really important for them to like think about that kind of stuff, like think deeply as well. And another thing is like they might be, I don't know, they might ask interesting questions that like might throw some people off guard, like maybe a question about, I don't know, like why does the Catholic Church not believe in same-sex marriage? Something like that. And like I think sometimes that can be like really confronting for a small group leader, because sometimes it's like, I don't exactly know where I stand or like what the church says. We like might just be unsure of like that answer. And if they ask that kind of question, like don't shut it down or like don't try to stop it. Just like say, hey, like that's actually a really good question. And if you genuinely don't know what the answer is, like go and seek out someone who knows the answer, so that they always, like they're always getting the answer that they deserve and need. And just like always, like if they ask anything, like don't I don't know, shut it down. Like, don't ever make it seem like it's a dumb question, because I think like sometimes in school people are really afraid to ask questions because it might be seen like dumb, or like the classmates like be like, oh, like why would you ask that? Like small groups kind of needs to be a place of like no dumb questions, like no judgment, just ask whatever you want to ask kind of space. I don't really know if that like answers the question.
Do you guys like, how do you, I guess it's like creating an open and safe space, right? Like, do you have any sort of specific things that you do to put in place that help create that? Like, is it like, I'll say, oh, everything that you say here is confidential, whatever, or like, is there stuff like that you do as NET?
Yeah, so for us, we have, usually it's important in like a retreat day setting to have multiple like small groups, and like, so we like split it up. Like first small group is just mainly getting to know them. Second small group is usually before like the main sharing, which is like, I guess that gateway for them to like think about and like think about the topic and think about the theme and just be like, and during the talk, and then after the talk, you can like be like, hey, what did you take away from that? Like, what did you do? So we like usually always position it in that time to like be able for them to like have already thought about it and just be like, hey, what did you get out of that talk? What did you obtain? And then we have like third sessions usually are like a prem-in session. So then we get to have like one-on-one chats with them and be able to be like, hey, like, it's usually like, what do you want prayer for? But you're usually also able to be like, no, do you just want to chat? And they just be like, yeah, I'll be down for that. And they're very open to that. And it's also very important to like be like aware of where they're at with their faith. Yeah. And like, just be like, don't ever force what you believe on them. Always invite them into it, because it's very important. Because I've had personal experiences where a kid came up to me like personally, he's like, hey, thank you for like not forcing what you had on me, but like just inviting me into it. Yeah. And I was a lot more open to like discussion because of that. And it's like very important that you don't, I guess, talk at them. Yeah. Or just like, I guess, talk with them. Yeah. I guess.
Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Have you seen like any examples or just like really cool like stories of small groups and just like I guess putting those into practice, being, I don't know if you were surprised at like this one kid or something that just like opened up straight away, or like, have you had any of those experiences?
I had quite a few.
Yeah, like I feel like sometimes in small groups you'll have like this person who like doesn't really talk, or they just seem really disinterested in the day. Like they'll just like kind of like sit there and like you'll ask a question and they might roll their eyes, or they might be like, oh, okay. Like they don't, it's like obvious that they don't want to be there. And when you have someone like that, if you like kind of go up to them outside a small group and you're a bit like, hey, like I want to get to know you, kind of like not in their face, but like actually get to know them. And then when you get that chance to like sit down and like actually talk to them at the end of the day, because yeah, like Alan was saying, we get to like sit down and like just have like a one-on-one conversation. And then in that time, we also get to pray with them. It's funny, like the students that seem the least likely to pray in your small group are the ones that like do. Like sometimes it's like the really rowdy kid, or the one that's like really naughty, or the one just like obviously does not want to be there. That actually is like, you ask them like, hey, like would you like to pray today? And they actually say yes. So I feel like that's happened a lot for me in my small groups. Yeah. And like Alan as well, and people on the team.
Yeah. Sometimes you get those like massive where you're just like blown back because they're just like, I want to get baptized, and you're just like, hold up. Just like just from like the day and just from like small groups and being like, like we're really connected. And especially like just like you being able to open up stuff to them was just like just a massive thing for them, because they're not used to being able to like get their questions answered. They're always like I guess diverted, and when they're in that space where they can ask the questions about the faith and just being able to be answered, it's really good for them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think something that like young people really need is people to just understand them, but also to share with them what their life has been like. I think like if you communicate the best to them and you just say like, hey, like this is who I am, and just be authentically yourself, and just like show them that like, hey, I have authentic love for you as well. I think it like speaks a lot to them. Like I think that's what they need in like today's society, is just like people are just so I don't know, we're like kind of spoken about this before, but like on their phones all the time. No one's really having a relationship with one another. So when you go to like a retreat day and they see like, hey, there are these strangers that are like wanting to have like a relationship with me. It speaks a lot, because like that's all we want as humans is to have a relationship. And so if you just show like a young person, hey, like I want to have a relationship with you, and you can do that through having a small group, like it just speaks so much to them, and it just shows them like genuine love. And I think, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I think you guys covered everything that you had here anyway, but did you have any sort of final tips or just thoughts for the lovely people of Hamilton about small groups?
I guess just like be confident. I was like really thinking about this before. It's just like, don't be afraid of like who you are. I think it's like really easy to be like, oh no, like I need to like lead the small group and like make sure everything's going perfectly, and I don't want, like, just be confident in who you are and like the questions that you ask, and like don't be afraid of like showing them little like weird quirky things about yourself. Like I know sometimes in small groups, like if I feel like they're not quite like connecting with me, I'll just share like a really embarrassing story about myself, and then they'll be like, oh cool, and they're like kind of chill out a little bit more, and they're less see you as a teacher and see you more as like a friend. And I think like Jesus is our friend, and if we can show them like that we can be their friend and we don't even know them, then like hopefully they can see that like Jesus can become their friend as well. And so
it's like a very real thing where like a lot of like they connect to very different people. You connect to different people. So if you're someone else and they might not connect to you because you're being that different person, and you might be called to be like, hey, I need to be myself with, so maybe just one kid can connect to me and can encounter Jesus through that, or like something like that. And that's a really powerful thing to do.
Yeah.
And also just in the fact of being confident, make sure like you know that you can keep your like small group like in check, where it doesn't go off the rails, and like two kids are having a conversation here while the rest of them are just kind of just like silent and stuff. Like make sure you have that control, like not control, like, but you are running the small group.
How do you do that? Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah. What do you do to like keep that?
Keep that?
Yeah.
So I'm like, for me personally, I'm just like, if they are having their own conversation, I go like the whole teacher approach where Tammy does hate this, but where I'm just like, oh, do you guys want to share with the group what you're talking about? And then they're like really awkward, but then you just like, everyone's just like staring at them, so they just like have no choice anymore. And you can't just like make them talk.
That's good though.
Yeah. And then like another way is if they're mucking up, make sure like, or like if they course like say something bad about another person, just be like, hey, nah, we're here for like a respectful atmosphere. We're here for like building each other up to build that positive culture. And you can be that culture. You can like build the youth up, and they can see that and like see that like kind of like copy you in that way, which is really cool. And like games are like very last resort, because it is very like, it does build connect, but it doesn't like get that conversation going. It's just a game. And it's sometimes distracting for the small groups around you if there's more than one small group. So it's a very last resort if they're like not talking at all, or like zero talking is going on. But I think like another good way to like control your small group is, I don't really like be like, oh, what are you guys talking about? I don't know, it doesn't really happen that often where like kids will like go off and like talk by themselves. But something that I kind of do before we actually start talking about like who they are and stuff, like I'll say, hey guys, like I'm Tammy, and I want you guys to know that like this is a space of no judgment. And I kind of just say like, this is also a space where we want to listen to the person who's talking. So like really like if someone's talking, like pay attention to them, and just like kind of like subtly set the rules of like the culture of the small group before like you start to talk. And like now with all that said, like let's get to know each other and just like hang out and have a good time, like just so that they really can feel the vibe of like, we're not going to go off and have our own conversation. And like there is those students that like want to do that, and kind of like towards the end of a small group it gets kind of like, I'm really tired and I don't want to like be talking anymore. I want to like go back with everyone else, especially if you have like 20-minute small groups. Like they take a while, like sometimes it can like get dry, like the conversation kind of dies. And I think
if you've got like a couple minutes left and you kind of feel like, hey, like my small group could use like playing a game, like you can. But I think, just keep, what Alan said, like keep fighting for that conversation to keep going. That was something that like our team really reflected on, especially at the start of the years. Like, I think it was really easy for us to be like, oh, this is kind of getting hard, let's play a game. But it was like, what's like the purpose of that game? Like, is it actually like allowing them to connect, or is it like stopping them from like genuinely talking and like getting to know each other? So just like really being aware of like, what does the small group need right now? And you can lead that through like setting the culture, as Alan was saying. But
well, thanks for coming, for your time and for your wisdom. And we'll be praying for you. Pray for us as well. And we're looking forward to having you guys just minister to our young people out here.